Hour. We are joined on the phone this morning by the Secretary of State here in the state of Mississippi, Michael Watson. Mr. Secretary, good morning.
Good morning, Richard. How are you, buddy?
Doing well. Doing well. Always appreciate your time and enjoy our visits. We are getting close. 40 days until November 5th, Election Day in the state of Mississippi. I know preparations in your office are ongoing. Where are we right now?
Yeah, so absolutely, it's good to let people know that absentee voting started on Monday. So if you, going to meet one of the excuses, and by the way, make sure everybody understands to go to YALLVote.MS, where all the information is for elections. And you can call us, you can call your circuit clerk, election commissioners. It's really important to have trusted information. So let me get that out there first. Absentee voting has started, though. And
hold on. Let me make sure I got that website right. YALLVote. YALL vote.MS. That is the most Mississippi website address ever, and I love it.
That's it. A lot of credit to the current Lieutenant Governor, Gilbert Husband. I believe he's the administration that put that into place. So a lot of credit there. But, that's the website, and we've got a lot of tools on there for folks to go search. My Election Day is one of the most important ones. And for those who are going to vote absentee, you can track your ballot through My Election Day. So that's another one they need to know about. You can also find your precinct. You can find the folks that your elected officials in your district. This is a big election, clearly, in the federal realm of things. President, United States Senate, congressional members, but also at the state level, Richard. We've got our Supreme Court justices. We've got some Court of Appeals justices. We've got some other races that are on their local races. So very important that folks take the time to go to My Election Day and really do some research about the candidates they'll be voting for. So very important information there.
Secretary Watson, I was just talking before the break about the fact that, based on our backgrounds, we have different views. We look at the same issue and we look at it in different ways. And sometimes it's hard to understand why people view a single issue differently. And most commonly, that's, if you're talking about people on opposite sides of the political aisle. But sometimes within the same party, people look at issues differently. I think there is an example with a case that is pending in appeals right now in Mississippi that not only are Mississippians looking at, but people all over the country are looking at, that has to do with mail-in ballots. The Republican Party, the RNC in Mississippi, and others suing the state of Mississippi for its mail-in ballot policies, which currently, and correct me if I'm wrong here, allow for mail-in ballots that are postmarked by Election Day, so November 5th this year, to be received up to 5 days after Election Day and still be counted. If I've read everything correctly, your office has been in support of this law staying in place while the RNC and others are suing the state of Mississippi to change this law and make Election Day the cutoff. Is that a fair summation?
That's a fair summation, and because it's a pending lawsuit, I can't say too much. But I will tell you this. The key piece there for me is, look, that's what the legislature passed here in Mississippi. That's their job. That's why I support it. If we back up very high level, Richard, this came into place during COVID year, 2020, when the legislature put it into place. I didn't support it then, didn't like it then, don't like it now. That said, that's the policy position. On the legal side of things, because the legislature put that into law, that's why I support the lawsuit. I'm arguing on basis of law alone. Policy-wise, I probably got a different position, but as far as law goes, the legislature put it into place, and that's why I support the lawsuit.
That's an interesting way to look at that, and actually takes a little bit of nuance, and you actually have to pay attention to what you're saying to say, look, I may not agree with the actual policy as it exists, but it is the law in the state of Mississippi, and part of your job as the Secretary of State is to uphold the laws and fight for the laws that exist and are in place, right?
That's exactly right. When it comes to elections, this is a very important piece for people to know. Again, we look at the federal guidance, the Constitution. This is a decision that's left to the states. And so when the states put a law into place, that's the law, and that's what we've got to support. So that makes it very easy for me to support this lawsuit because, again, federalism, the idea that the states here make the laws with elections, that's why we support it.
Yeah. Visiting with Secretary of State Michael Watson, why is it that and this is not, I don't think this is speaking specifically to the lawsuit, why is it that so many other states are so closely watching the results of this case?
Well, again, you've got the postmark piece there and whether or not you can receive a ballot after Election Day. So what does Election Day mean? I think that's where a lot of folks are trying to pay attention and see what the court says ultimately on this. And look, it may not get to that definition. It may get to, the piece where, well, wait a minute, this is a state law. We're going to back the state. We're not even going to get to the minutia, the policy positions that are in that lawsuit. This is just going to be decided on whether or not we should support the state being able to say that's the law in that state. So I think that's the bigger discussion, Richard, whether or not Election Day means it has to be in by Election Day, or you can do some of these other states. Look, Mississippi is one of the limited ones of 5 days. You've got other states that have bigger windows than that. And I think that's where the big discussion is. Wait a minute, that's getting a little edgy there. We've got a couple other, policies dealing with if people didn't bring their ID. Somebody comes in to vote, they don't have their ID. They've got a 5-day window to come back in and show their ID. So there's a couple of different, again, you get back to the minutia here and this nuanced idea of there are certain different pieces of the angle to argue. Other states, if they got a 10-day window, a 12-day window, well, that's getting a little suspect to me.
It's like what the definition of is. That was fairly confusing a few years ago, if I remember correctly. I guess this is cause for speculation. You may not feel comfortable doing this. Typically, the wheels of justice seem to move slowly. Like we look at cases that advance through the court system, and sometimes cases hang out in the docket trying to get to the Supreme Court for a really, really long time, never even get taken up. Do you think there's a chance that this ends up at the United States Supreme Court level before Election Day, which is 40 days away?
We take off my Secretary of State hat here and put on my lawyer hat here. I think there's a lot of pressure to get this thing decided. So perhaps, it could, but you also got to think about, as a lawyer, the Purcell Doctrine. If you're going to change election law right up heading into an election, the courts frown on that. So that's a tough one as far as the time goes. Again, a lot of eyes are on it, but you also have a lot of precedent on the other side of Purcell Doctrine and others that say, wait a minute, you can't change election law this close to the election. So we'll see. It's, again, a toss-up in my mind whether or not it gets decided before, but there's a whole lot of eyes watching this one.
September, Secretary Watson, is National Voter Registration Month, and there are people who are not registered to vote in Mississippi. We know that very much. What is their timeline with the election closing in to register and be eligible to vote this November 5th?
Yeah, so great question, and I'm going to preface this just a little bit. We talked yesterday to some folks, and I was telling them about 85% of the Mississippians who are eligible to register to vote are actually already registered. Big number, and really proud of that here in Mississippi. So I want folks to know that. The voter registration deadline this year, October 7th. So you have to be registered to vote by October 7th if you want to participate in this year's election on November 5th. That said, there is never a deadline to register to vote.
Right.
Now, I want to be very clear there. If you want to vote in this election, October 7th is the cutoff. But you can always register to vote. And really proud of the numbers we've been able to generate here in my term in the Secretary of State's office. North of 320,000 newly registered voters in Mississippi. So really proud of that.
Wow, that's fantastic.
Combination of things that we've done, traveled in the state, going to high schools, going to colleges, going to different events. We call it our registration road trip. We do that. We do our PTV. Yesterday I was talking to people in Cassuth in North Mississippi. So we do all that we can to encourage folks to go vote. I'm really proud of the efforts we've made.
So if you are not currently registered to vote, if my math is right, you have 11 days to become registered if you want to vote in this November 5th election, which is 40 days away. So you've still got a little bit of time to do that. How many eligible registered voters are there in Mississippi?
About 1.9, I think we have.
Okay.
On the books now, so somewhere in that neighborhood, which is, again, a big number. When you
That's roughly two-thirds the population of the state.
That's right, and, well, you got to consider we've got young people that are younger than 18. So,
yeah.
By the way, somebody asked this question the other day. I think this is great to get on the news. If you are going to be 18 by the general election, but you're not going to be 18 by October 9th. You can still register to vote. So make sure we get that out there, too, for the young folks that are excited about voting for the first time. Make sure you got that under your hat.
You know, interestingly, if I was rewinding and was still in, like, high school, my birthday is November 5th, which is Election Day this year. So if I were in high school right now, I would be eligible to register and then could vote on my birthday the day that I turn 18.
What a great example, Richard. Thank you.
You like that? You got time to hang with us for a couple of minutes?
I do.
All right. Secretary of State Michael Watson joining us on the Gallo Radio Show. SuperTalk Mississippi with you on this Thursday morning. Quick time out. We've got more coming up as we wrap up the 7 o'clock hour after this. Just a couple of minutes left with Secretary of State Michael Watson. Glad to be with you. This is such a general question. And I know it's something that we have discussed loosely in the past. But, Michael, when I hear the people who push back against voter ID and citizenship requirements and all of those things, and they want to talk about that being voter suppression, it makes me want to pull my hair out because I don't understand. And I'm trying to stick with the premise that we were with earlier. It's like I realize that different people can look at the same issue at the exact same time and have different interpretations or different opinions. Is there any rationale against the idea of voter ID, citizenship requirements, so that we have free and fair elections that is actually a sensible argument to you that makes sense?
I'll give you an example. There's one that people say, well, I can't get an ID. And that's where I give a lot of credit again to Delbert Husband and the work that they did when he was Secretary of State to implement voter ID. Not only will we give you a free ID, Richard, we would give you a ride to the courthouse to get your free ID. So to take every argument possible off the books that you could try to make that says I can't get an ID, that's what Mississippi did. So when you see going to that length to make sure it's very easy for people to get IDs, there's absolutely no argument whatsoever that makes sense to say I should not be showing my ID to go vote. Other countries across the world do it. It's insane to argue against voter ID.
Are you in favor of Election Day, the first Tuesday in November, annually being a federal holiday?
Yeah, I'm not offended by the idea. It's obviously a bigger conversation. We talk about the idea of making it easy for people to go vote and making it convenient. It wasn't real convenient for all those soldiers that gave their life. So it takes away a little bit of an argument. That said, look, we've got absentee voting. So if you can't get to the polls on Election Day, you already have an opportunity to do so. People say sometimes, well, look, I got to work from 7 to 7. Okay, that's the reason it's free to absentee vote. So you don't have an excuse anymore, so go absentee vote. It's so easy to vote in Mississippi right now, Richard. It's not even funny. We've made it as easy as possible. So really proud of the work we've done in the legislature as well as in our office.
Why, Secretary Watson, is it that we can point to Georgia, we can point to Pennsylvania, we can point to Michigan and other places, Nevada. Is it so hard to tabulate the votes in a timely fashion? I understand that there are states that have significantly higher populations than we do in Mississippi. But it just doesn't feel like it should be a process that goes on for hours and hours and hours, if not days, after the polls close on Election Day. So why is it?
Well, I'll tell you from Mississippi example, we've got absentee ballots. So you've got an affidavit ballots. So you've got a team that has to go through those. They can be processed as far as like whether or not they're going to be opened up and looking at the ballots. That can start the day of Election Day at 8 a.m. in the morning. They cannot be counted until 7 p.m. on Election Day. But you've got to go through all those to make sure the signature was across the flap or the absentee ballot was checked off properly and the initials from the clerk or the signature from the clerk's assistant or, all those things that have to be on that. So you've got to go through that to make sure that ballot is acceptable. So I would think that in a bigger state with a lot more absentee or affidavit, depending on what their process is, that's going to take them a little more time when they've got a lot more absentees than Mississippi would have. That said, there's no excuse for it to take a number of days past Election Election Day. The way we work now in Mississippi, and by the way, this is going to be the first election in the state's history, well, in a while anyway, since we've had all paper ballots. So Mississippians are going to be voting on paper ballots. They will be then scanned into an optic scanner to be counted. The great thing is, if anybody has any questions, we can always go back to that paper. And I think that's really important. A lot of discussions after 2020, but having a paper ballot is so important. So we have that now in Mississippi. Really proud, again, of the legislature for helping us get that done, as well as the counties, moving in that direction to have these paper ballots so we can go back and say that there's a paper verifiable trail.
Always appreciate your time. We are out of time. I will ask you, with 20 seconds until the break, do you have any concerns leading into Election Day?
I don't, but I do have a concern if I don't tell my wife happy anniversary, 15 years today.
There you go.
She likes to say, she says, Richard, look, it felt like 5 minutes underwater. So very proud of the girls. And they're on their way to school today. So girls, have a great day, and thank you for your mom.
Well, we've been friends for a long time. You have a beautiful family, great dad, in addition to all the other work that you're doing. Thanks so much for your time, Michael.
Thanks, bud. Talk soon.
Secretary of State Michael Watson joining us this morning. 8 o'clock hour on deck. This is the Gallo Radio Show. News coming up, and then another guest that you're going to enjoy when we come back on SuperTalk Mississippi.